Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our special council meeting tonight to present the budget for 2023. Si je peux avoir quelqu'un pour proposer l'ouverture de la séance, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose l'ouvrir de la séance.
Merci, la conseillère Swan-Pennefather. Je peux avoir l'appui, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, je l'appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Torres. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui.
Oui.
Merci. L'adoption de l'ordre du jour, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, je propose d'adopter l'ordre du jour de la première séance spéciale du 19 décembre 2022, tel que présenté.
Merci, la conseillère Torres. Je peux avoir l'appui, s'il vous plaît.
Oui, je l'appuie, Monsieur le maire.
Merci, la conseillère Swan-Pennefather. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui.
C'est parfait, merci. So we're going to move right on to a budget presentation this evening. The budget presentation will be made by Councillor Colleen Feeney, who handles that portfolio. So she'll be making a presentation about the 2023 operating budget and the program of capital expenditures for 2023, 24, and 25. You'll see I'll make some comments at the end of it after there's quite a chunk that's attributable to what's going on at the agglomeration. But I'll save it until Councillor Feeney's made her presentation. Go ahead, Councillor Feeney.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and welcome to all the participants tonight. I just want to say good evening. As Councillor of Finance, as the Mayor has said, I will be presenting the Montreal-Ouest budget for the year 2023 this evening. I will do the presentation in English. However, if anybody has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them in French at the end of the meeting. There's always an awful lot of work that goes into making a municipal budget. And I want to start by acknowledging all the work done by our interim DG and Treasurer Valentina Toderon, and all her staff and the management, our assistant treasurer, Ina Zabeda, and all our town directors, etc. They worked very hard, and we went through actually many iterations of this particular budget before we came up with the scenario that I'm going to be presenting to you tonight. So thank you very much. So we're going to start the budget by looking at, when we design a budget, what are our objectives? So among our objectives, we have, it's up there now? Okay, all right. Okay, so for our objectives, the first objective we had was to avoid the cuts to residents' services. In fact, we'll continue with some of the changes that we made during COVID, that is to offer a lot of our recreation programs online and in person, so that's actually a plus. Secondly, we want to provide maximum value for taxpayers by continuing to scrutinize all of our expenditures. And indeed, we did that this year. This happens not only at budget time, but actually that scrutiny happens all year through. The other thing we want to do is to limit the increase on the total tax bill of the average home, despite a sharp increase in the agglomeration tax. I am sure that you have read, and the Mayor will address this later, is that the agglomeration has increased their tax to the town of Montreal-Ouest by 12.1%. So but we still have that goal to limit the increases as much as we can. The next thing we want to do is to maintain our capital investments. Although you could think that could be a way we could cut, it's not actually part of the operating budget, which is taxed on that particular year. But also, we have learned that in the past, when we've tried to save money by not investing in our capital, it has come back to haunt us. We also want to monitor the availability of provincial and federal grants for special projects, and do the diligence of the staff again. We have been very, very fortunate in getting many grants over the past few years that very much help to defray the costs of these of these infrastructure projects, and therefore to lower the cost for our residents. And finally, we want to increase the overall tax base. With rising costs and very little industry in the town, the burden for the tax falls disproportionately on the residents of Montreal-West. So you've probably noticed that we have looked at some zoning changes, and in this budget we're hoping to enlist the services of a consultant to help us increase our tax and commercial base. So that is important as a future viability of the town. Okay, we'll move on now to some of the challenges that you're dealing with this year. Okay. we have a significant rise in inflation. This impacts all of our residents in their daily finances, but it also impacts the town as well. All of our contracts, or almost all of them, have increased, especially the recycling contract, cost of salt, etc. And of course, we have our contractual obligations to our employees. So those are the kinds of things that are already built in. So we know how it is to try to budget when you've got increasing costs and you don't want to increase your budget too much. We also wanted to provide services while keeping our operating budget stable. So we know we have to make cuts in some areas, so we strove to keep the local expenditures to a minimum. So those that were going up, we knew we had to make cuts elsewhere. Another challenge was the extremely large increase of 12.1% in the AGLO budget. This, I have to add, is in addition to the 10.2% increase we got from the AGLO last year. And last year they blamed it on the deficit, and we were led to believe that that was going to be more of a one-time thing and it would smooth back, but alas, no. The 12% that we got this year is on top of the 10% that we were given last year. So that has been a really big challenge in this year's budget. We're also looking to seek additional non-taxable revenues to mitigate the impact of the increased operating expenses on our property taxes. We try to do this. We don't have many other sources of revenue here in the town. We are not lucky enough to have our own hydroelectric company here, or to see a whole lot of new construction going on, which is going to bring in extra tax revenue. But we do look for little things. We have had, for the third year in a row, we have had to dip into our surplus to try to mitigate the taxes impact on our residents. We can't do this to a large extent because the price would be too hard to pay, too big a shock to the budget the following year. But we have done that again this year to try to help out with this. So we've got our challenges and we've had our ways to deal with every one of them. We'll go on now to what some of those numbers are going to be. Let's start with our revenues. So our revenues, as I said, we don't have a lot of other sources of revenue. So this main source of revenue for most municipalities, and in very particular for Montreal-West, is our municipal taxes. You can see in this chart, municipal taxes make up 83.46% of our total revenues. The major revenues after that are the duties on transfer. That wasn't always the second biggest source of revenue. It used to be recreation, but with the cost of our houses and with the wonderful real estate market that we've had in the past few years, that is now our second biggest source of revenue. But even that is only 3.55%, and that, as we've been reading in the newspaper as well, is not going to be particularly stable this coming year. After that, we have recreation, and recreation is 2.98, water taxes. There's a certain, if you see there, taxes on tenant lieu de taxe, in lieu of taxes, that's the money we get from the government for some of our institutions, let's say our schools, etc. It's not nearly equivalent to the value of the building, but it is something that we get from the government in lieu of taxes for those industries, those institutions which do not pay municipal tax. We have an MMC tax, which which we collect from residents. That's 0.65%, and then this is actually just remitted directly to the MMC. And the MMC is like the big brother, we could say, of the agglomeration council. The agglomeration is the city of Montreal and the outlying suburbs, and they're in charge of services such as fire and police and transport and water delivery, etc. Beyond that, the MMC includes, on top of that, the South Shore and larger regions around Montreal. And then you see also then another source of revenue, albeit small. It's big in it's big in numbers for us. Is again we have transferred from our surplus to bring in revenue there to help offset some of the other costs. Okay, so if we look specifically at the numbers, we see that Again, the biggest source of revenue is our residential taxes. They come in at $13,822,000. We have very little industry in the town, so it's mainly residential. So of our property taxes, almost 90% come from residents. Vacant lots make up a much smaller amount, and that's $56,000. And then non-residential, which is our commercial and almost no, but very, very teeny industrial, is $1.6 million. After that, I say payment en lieu de taxe. You can see where the largest increases are. The vacant lots, that has gone up, and that is a result of the valuation, the renewed valuation put out by the City of Montreal. The town of Montreal-West does not do valuations on our properties. That is a centralized service done by the City of Montreal, and I'm sure it probably relates to their desire to make sure that there's more housing available for people. They don't want to see a whole lot of vacant lots. So the cost of vacant lots, the property value of those has risen significantly. So we see a big increase there, and also a significant increase in non-residential. Then we see there are other sources of income. As I said, interest receivable on grants, water tax, very little change there. The MMC or CMM, as I had talked to you before about the larger region. Duties on transfer, we're going to keep that the same as last year. We know the market conditions have changed. We had a very good year last year, even better the year before, but we're not so sure. And all good budgeting practices shows that in terms of your revenues, it's best to be conservative in your budgeting, particularly for things over which you have no control, such as that. Recreation and culture, we are looking to have a 20% increase in our revenues, as all of our programs hopefully will be up and running. And this will hopefully be the first year after a few years of some spotty programs there, but we hope to see an increase there. No increase in tickets. This is mostly the SPVM tickets that we're talking about here. Same thing with permits. We've kept that the same as before. The fire station, we own the fire station. We do get revenue from them in that when we do repairs for the fire station, we are reimbursed by the City of Montreal plus an administrative fee. So that's what that particular revenue is. Interest, our interest rate, since it has increased, the rate has increased, and since we do have some surplus money, we do expect an increase of about $50,000 in our interest over this coming year over the past year. Other services are services such as rent that we get in, etc. It's not large amounts of money. And here we see a gain transfer from surplus. This year we're injecting $100,000 in the surplus. Last year we injected $170,000 from the surplus. So we can see that our revenues, our total revenues, we expect an increase of 7.5% over the prior year. If we look now to expenses, again, we'll start with the chart, and we'll start with total expenses, which shows the total budget of the town, which is $18,598,509. Of that amount, 39% goes to the AGLO for those shared services. That number keeps increasing every year for the town. Our local expenses are now only about 61%. And that, as we can see, is a decrease from last time, because last time our AGLO only took up 37% of our total expenses. Last year, our total expenses were $17.3 million. If we take the AGLO out of the picture and say, just what are we going to do for our local, I think I was looking at, If we want to see how we divide up our total expenses, again, we see the AGLO is the largest part of our budget at 39%. After that, it's public works, 17%, recreation and culture, 14.75%, administration, 10%, debt servicing at 8%, Environmental health. And environmental health includes water, hydrants, waste management, and the environment. Public security, 2.8%. Inspection and permits, 1.25%. And then the capital expenditures out of our revenues at 0.16%. This is really the same graph we're looking at, the same chart we're looking at now, except we've taken Aglo out of the picture, and we're looking at just our own expenses, the local expenses. So that's 60% of that pie, and then you can see, of course, how that divides up differently among, of course, still the public works is still the largest, followed by recreation, etc. But this gives you a better picture with your tax money here locally, where it's going. So it's pretty consistent from year to year. If we now look at the specific numbers, sorry, I'm just going to rearrange this here. Okay, we'll go by department. So first, council. That's a slight increase of 3.3%, just for increased costs on various items. Administration, that's going up about 2.6%. In fact, in a lot of these areas, if you see anything going up like a very small amount like that, in fact, there have probably been cuts to the operating budget, but because of negotiations, contract agreements with employees, rising benefit costs, and rising deductions at source. All those things bring up salaries and benefits to at least over 3.5%. So anything less than that, you can see that we've actually made cuts to those departments. So administrations, yes, we've made some cuts there. Same thing with public security, few cuts there. In public works, it goes up only slightly, and that is basically because of two large contract increases that I had mentioned. The recycling contract has gone up. Oh, no, sorry, that's the next one. The cost of salt and asphalt have gone up, I guess, probably about $80,000 between the two of them. So that's a lot of that increase there. When we go to the environmental health, again, that's gone up, and that is mainly the recycling contract that's responsible for that, and the water contract. So that goes up 4.6. When we look at the next area on inspections and permits, that's gone up a little bit more. And that is because due to the high number of the building permits that we had been giving out over the past couple of years, we did decide in the budget of actually 2022 to bring an extra hand on board to help with that department. We had a very, very, very slim urban planning department. It include one full-time person, residents requests, and with our inspections. So we brought somebody on last year, but that was only part of the year. So the increase you see there is to keep that person on for the entire year. Recreation and culture, we would normally see some more increases here because we are, as you can see from our revenue, bringing more revenue. We're going to have some more programs. That means we're going to be hiring a few more people. So those costs are going up. However, what is going down here is that we have decreased the budget by $65,000, making the assumption that the arena will not be operational as of the fall. So that's an important part to put in here too, actually, as to let you and residents watching on the YouTube know that there is no extra money in this budget related to the Sports and Recreation Center. And in fact, we see here that there is a decrease in the expenses based on the fact and on the hope that we will be able to move forward with that next year. When we move on, we'll see the capital expenditures out of revenues, and that's an expenditure of $30,000, and that is basically to install flow restrictors on Easton to help with our sewer system there. Debt service, there's a little bit of an increase in the rate for sure, so this is why this is going up 5.1%, but it is still well within the good budgeting of the amount of the local expenses that we are looking at. So that's under control. So therefore, our total local expenses are going to be $11,329,509. And that is an increase of $512,000 over the prior year, an increase of only 4.7%. So I think that that's quite amazing, given some of the contractual obligations we have, etc. We've been able to keep the local expenses to 4.7%. That was one of our objectives at the beginning, and we have, thanks to a lot of hard work, succeeded with that. Unfortunately, the next line tells you a different story. The agglomeration remittance will go up 12.1%. Over that, we have no control. And so that brings our total expenses to 7.5% increase, or a $1,298,000 increase over the past year. When we're looking at budgets, we do also take a look. Am I on the right one now here? Yeah, at our infrastructure. Okay. At budget time, we also put in a capital expenditure list. It's called the PTI, the Plan Triennial d'Investissement, and it's a 3-year program. This is not coming out of the operating budget, so it's either being paid for by our surplus or by loans, or out of our operating capital fund. So these are things that we want to have done. This year, we would like to move forward with what we have on the list for 2023. For 2024 and 2025, as we always say, those are more wish lists. We hope we can move forward with it, but it depends really on budget conditions, and sometimes it's going to depend on grants. But let's take a look at it anyway. So for 2023, we hope to spend $15.791 million on our capital expenditures. Of that, $30,000 will be for infrastructure, and that's the flow restrictors that I had just mentioned. In buildings, we are hoping to spend $15.6 million. Of that, $15 million will be for new sports and recreation center, and the other $600,000 is for much needed work on the town hall. Then in equipment, we're not going to be investing in our capital, out of our capital at all this particular year. In vehicles, however, we do have to replace 2 vehicles, one for public security and one for public works, and that amounts to $105,000. In 2024, we look to invest $2.1 million in our infrastructure, and that will be the resurfacing of Avon on the eastern side, and lights, and redoing the lights on the corner of Avon and Westminster. And buildings, again, there should be probably about $5.1 million left for the recreation center, and again, the other $100,000 for the town hall. And in vehicles, again, 2 more vehicles, one for the public works and one for public security. And I must admit, we're not like replacing our 2019 vehicles. The vehicles that we're going to be replacing are ones from 2009, some of the 2014, etc. So and there are a lot of miles go on to, especially the public security ones. So this is definitely a needed vehicle. In 2025. The $1.75 million set up there for infrastructure is for work on Courtney. In buildings, the $250,000 would be to equip our buildings with an updated fiber optic network. And for vehicles, we are again looking at a public works vehicle and the purchase of a Zamboni, which we have been renting for the past little while. Again, as I say, these are spelled out a little bit more in the next few slides. I don't need to go through all of them because I've already mentioned them, but all this presentation will be on the website as of tomorrow morning, so you can take a look at that then. So let's go straight to the final slide, which is not here. Okay. So on the final slide, we've got what you're all interested in is the increase in your tax bill. So as you have probably noticed, your valuation of your house has gone up significantly. In fact, the average house in Montreal-West in 2022 was valued at $729,000. It has gone up 41.82% to $1,033,882. That is the average house now in Montreal-West. We're going to look at the taxes now. So the taxes, as you know, when valuation goes up, we can decrease our mill rate. So that is the rate that we charge you per $100 of your valuation, and that is how we can keep your tax rates at not going up 40% when your valuation has gone up 40%. So we have decreased our local mill rate from 0.6496 to 0.4833. The AGLO share has also gone down from 0.5117 to 0.4009, and the MMC has gone down slightly as well because of the increased valuation on the houses. What does this mean in real dollars? Well, in 2022, the average house locally spent $4,735 of your tax money went locally. That's going up to $4,997 in 2023, an increase of $261 or 5.52%. We wish we could keep it like that. However, you have to pay the AGLO. So the AGLO is going up 11.11% and comprises now $4,145 of the average household. And MMC has gone up slightly to $77, but that's still an increase of 6%. So we see that the average house price tax in 2022 was $8,538. It is now $9,218, or an increase of 7.96%. I wish the news were a little better than that, but I think under the circumstances, under the hand with which we were dealt, we've come out with a good scenario. We've certainly done what we could at the local level. When we look at how we've done vis-a-vis our strategic financial plan, we set goals there. Sorry, I'm just going to take a little peek. It's all written somewhere, but somehow or other it's moved. Okay. So let me see. Okay. Anyway, in looking at our strategic financial plan, we see that we have been able to limit the property increases locally anyway to below the cost of living increase, which is now expected to be 6.7%. We see that we have used some of our surplus to try also to limit those tax increases. We see that we've been able to keep our debt financing to a level at about 13%, well below the 18% that we set forward in our strategic plan. We are going to go forward with our capital investments. I know it could be kind of tempting at a time like this not to do it, and I know very well-meaning councils in the past might have done that too, so as not to increase taxes. But we now see the state of our roads and sidewalks, and we know we've got to move forward. And the same goes for the state of our buildings, be they the town hall or be they the recreation center. Not enough money was injected in the past, and it's time we have to do it now. So we are moving forward with those things. And the mayor is trying very hard to continue his work with the agglomeration and with the people in the government to see if we can rejig that formula that seems to be particularly difficult for the suburbs and the demerged municipalities. That is the situation for next year. I can only say what I'm presenting today is the average increase for the resident who has whose valuation has gone up, the average amount, which is about 41%. If your valuation went down less than that, you will have an increase less than 7.96%. Some people for duplexes and triplexes where their valuation went down significantly less than the 40%, still went up, but maybe more like 20-25%. Some of them might even have a decrease in their taxes. But we know that 3 years ago, they had a high increase. So it's like things do tend to level off. For people whose valuation has gone up more than 40%, then you will see a tax increase higher than 7.96%. And there's not much I can do about that except to tell you to contest your valuation if you think that it is not fair and if you think it is not in line with those properties around you. On our website, we have a whole we have information about how you can contest this, how they base those valuations, etc. You do have to pay, and you do have to do your research, and you could end up paying the same or more. So that's the risk you take. But it's a really big chunk if your valuation has gone up and you feel that it has gone up unfairly. And if there is actually an interest enough, I think we will even have a little session or a seminar in the new year to encourage people or to tell them how they can go about doing the contestation of their valuation. So that is the news. It comes down at 7.96%, but again, I will stress the fact that for the local, it is 5.5%, and I will also end this presentation the way I started it, with an extremely large thank you to our interim DG, Valentina Todorant, and our treasurer, to our assistant treasurer, Ina Zabeda, and to all our directors and managers who have worked so hard to slash their budgets and who actually have made personal sacrifices in order to not increase the budget anymore for the residents. We're really lucky to have fine staff here working with us, and so again, thank you. And if you have any questions, I'll be very, very happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. So there will be a question period at the end of this meeting, and then we go on to our regular meeting. But now let's finish going through the agenda for this meeting, and then we'll go right on to this question period. So if I could have somebody for question number 3, presentation and adoption of the budget for 2023.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt the 2023 budget of the Town of Montreal-West for an amount of $598,502. And second, to deposit a copy of the 2023 budget in the Town of Montreal-West archives.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. Can I have a seconder, please?
I second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yulin. All in favor, please.
Aye.
Thank you. Adoption of the 2023-24-25 program of capital expenditures.
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Yes, Mr. Mayor. I move to adopt the 2023, 2024, and 2025 program of capital expenditures for the Town of Montreal-West as follows. For 2023, the amount of $15,791,950. B, for 2024, an amount of $7,440,000. C, for 2025, an amount of $2,195,000, and to deposit a copy of this program in the Town of Montreal-West archives.
Thank you very much, Councillor Yulin. Can I have a seconder, please?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I second that.
Thank you very much, Councillor Feeney. All in favor, please.
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much. On se rend tout de suite à la période des questions. We're going right to a question period now. So if you do have a question, please step up to the iPad that's behind you, state your name and your address, and ask your question. And if not, that's okay too. We're going on to our regular question period, and we'll take questions even at the end of our regular question period, for the regular meeting, excuse me, if we need to. There are no questions that came online. Just let me double check now. Yeah, no questions have come online. So if I could have somebody, since there are no questions this evening, if I could have somebody move to close this meeting, and we'll go right into our regular meeting.
Oui, Monsieur le maire, je propose de lever la séance.
Merci, la conseillère Swan-Pennefather. Je peux avoir l'appui, s'il vous plaît?
Oui, je l'appuie.
Merci, la conseillère Torres. Tout en faveur, s'il vous plaît.
Oui.
Oui.
Oui.